Tomorrow I'm going to give you guys a handout that kind of summarizes the different types of factoring that we could see. I mentioned it, when we started talking about quadratic equations, we made a list in our notes, but I think it'll help to kind of have it all on one sheet of paper, basically. But one type of factoring that I didn't have time, I don't think, to put in our notes, so I don't know that we'll get a chance to talk about it, is factoring by grouping. So I wanted to make you a video of that real quick. It says sometimes there's not a GCF. We did talk about always pulling out a GCF if there is one, but sometimes there's not. And if you've got four terms, then you can try factoring by grouping. Okay, that makes factor by grouping really, really recognizable because again, you have to have four terms. Okay, a lot of our factoring maybe only has two terms or three terms, but factoring by grouping is going to have four, okay? We will group the first two terms together and then the last two terms together. So basically what we're doing is we're pairing them up. Factor out a GCF from each separate binomial and then factor out the common binomial. Because if factoring by grouping works, they will have a common binomial, okay? So the first type of factoring was factoring out a GCF. We're still factoring out a GCF now, so that's super duper important. So make sure that, if you get a question asked that says factor, you're always looking for a GCF, okay? So here's the first example. I'm pairing them up. Looking at the x cubed and the 7x squared, recognizing that they have an x squared in common, opening a parenthesis, leaving behind an x plus 7. Bringing this middle sign down, the plus sign, looking at the 2x and the 14, and they've just got a 2 in common, leaves behind an x plus 7. So factoring by grouping is working when this left behind binomial matches. And then to create our factors, you will include one of those like factors, the x plus 7, and then you will do the numbers that are out in front. So the x squared plus 2 will create the other factor, okay? The second one here, there isn't a GCF in all four of these terms, right? Some of them have x's, he doesn't, so there isn't anything number-wise that we can pull out either from all of them. So pairing them up looks like this. Pulling the x, which is the biggest thing these guys have in common out of these two terms, leaving behind a 3x plus y. Bringing down your negative sign or subtraction sign, that's super important. Looking at these guys and recognizing that they have a 4 in common. Leaving behind your 3x. Negative 4 times 3x gets you that negative 12x. Negative 4 times y gets you that negative 4y. So be careful that you get the sign to match here because you do want these binomials to match. And if you don't pull the sign down with it and recognize that a negative times a positive gets you back to that negative 4, you aren't probably going to get the right sign there, okay? So these guys match, so that will create one of your factors. And then the x minus 4 will create the other, okay? All right, I'm going to stop the video here and then explain the last few in a separate video.